I married my best friend's widow to save her daughter. But I never expected this. There's a moment in a man's life when he realizes that the bravest thing he ever did had nothing to do with courage at all. It had to do with showing up. Just showing up, even when everything inside him said it was too hard. Even when the grief was so thick you could almost touch it. That's where my story begins. Not with a grand gesture or a heroic decision, but with a Tuesday morning in October, a front porch, and a little girl holding a half-melted popsicle she didn't really want. Her name was Lily. She was 5 years old, and she was looking up at me with those enormous brown eyes like she was trying to figure out whether I was going to stay or go. I reckon most people in my life had been asking themselves the same question about me for years. Let me back up. My name is Daniel Marsh. I grew up in Clover Hill, Tennessee, which is exactly the kind of small town the name suggests. Quiet roads, church on Sundays, everybody knowing everybody's business and pretending they don't. I was 38 years old when all of this happened. Not young, not old, just a man somewhere in the middle of his life, still trying to figure out which direction the rest of it was supposed to go. Marcus Webb had been my best friend since the 7th grade. We grew up 2 streets apart, played ball together through high school, drove to community college in the same old truck with the broken passenger window. He was the kind of man who made a room feel warmer just by walking into it. Generous, steady, always had time for anybody who needed it. When Marcus married Elena Rivera in the summer of 2016, I stood beside him at that altar, and I meant every word of the toast. I gave at the reception. I told everyone that Marcus Webb was the finest man I had ever known, and I was not exaggerating. Elena was something else entirely. Dark hair, warm laugh, the kind of woman who remembered everybody's birthday and somehow always knew exactly what to say when things were hard. She was a kindergarten teacher. Of course she was. I say that with genuine admiration, because there is no harder job in the world and no kinder heart required for it than hers. They had Lily in 2018. I was at that hospital. I held that baby girl before she was even 20 minutes old, and I told Marcus he was in serious trouble because she had his stubborn chin and her mama's eyes, and together, that combination was going to run that man's entire life. He laughed so hard the nurses peeked in to check on him. Marcus died in March of 2023. A heart attack. 41 years old. No warning, no goodbye, no chance for any of us to prepare. He was there on a Friday and gone by Saturday morning, and the world just kept going, indifferent and relentless, while the rest of us stood in the ruins of his absence trying to remember how to breathe. I did what I could in those first weeks. I helped with the funeral arrangements. I mowed Elena's lawn. I brought groceries, fixed the screen door that had been sticking since the previous fall. Small things, the kinds of things you do when the big thing, the real thing, is completely beyond your power to fix. I couldn't bring Marcus back, so I brought casseroles. But weeks became months, and the community's attention moved on the way it always does. Life keeps its own schedule regardless of your heartbreak. Elena went back to teaching in September. Lily started kindergarten, and I watched from a careful distance as this woman tried to rebuild something resembling a normal life for herself and her little girl. I won't pretend I didn't care about Elena beyond friendship, but I want to be clear about something, and I think about this a lot, even now. There was nothing calculated about what happened between us, nothing opportunistic or convenient. What grew between us grew slowly and honestly, the way real things do, born entirely from shared grief and mutual respect and 100 small, ordinary moments of just being present for each other. It was Lily who asked me first, actually. We were sitting on the back porch one Saturday in the spring of 2024. Elena had gone inside to make lemonade. Lily was quiet for a while, swinging her legs off the edge of the step. Then she looked up at me with those serious eyes and said, very simply, "Daniel, are you going to be our family now?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the yard, at the little vegetable garden Marcus had planted along the fence that Elena had kept going faithfully, because she said it felt like tending something he had loved. I thought about Marcus. I thought about what he would say to me if he could. I thought about what it means to love someone. Not just the romantic version of it, but the full, complicated, all-in version of love that includes showing up for someone else's child at 7 in the morning when she has a nightmare, and arguing gently about whether to keep the old house or sell it, and sitting together in silence on hard evenings when words feel inadequate. I looked at Lily. I said, "I'm working on it, kiddo." She seemed satisfied with that. She went back to her popsicle. Elena and I had a long conversation that summer. One of those late-night kitchen table conversations that starts at 9 o'clock and ends sometime after midnight, with empty mugs of chamomile tea and the kind of honesty that only comes from exhaustion and trust. We talked about Marcus. We talked about guilt, which both of us carried in different ways. We talked about what Lily needed and what we needed, and whether those two things could exist in the same life together. She told me she wasn't looking for someone to replace Marcus. She said she'd never stop loving him, and she didn't expect me to ask her to. I told her I would never ask her to. That Marcus was part of who she was, and who Lily was. And if I was going to be part of this family, I was going to be part of all of it. The grief included, the memory included, the empty chair at Thanksgiving included. She was quiet for a long time after I said that. Then she looked at me across that kitchen table with the kind of look that makes a man feel like he's been seen clearly, maybe for the first time in his life, and she said, "You know, Marcus always said you were the most decent person he knew." I had to look away for a moment. I'll admit that. He was wrong. I said, when I'd collected myself. He was the most decent person I knew. She smiled. And somehow, in that small exchange, something settled between us. Not a resolution of grief, because grief doesn't resolve, but an understanding, a beginning. We were married quietly in the spring of 2025. Lily was the flower girl. She took the job extremely seriously, scattering petals with the focused determination of a child who has decided this is the most important task she has ever been given. Halfway down the aisle, she ran out of petals and looked up at me in mild panic. I gave her a reassuring nod and mouthed the words, "You're doing great." She straightened up and walked the rest of the way with enormous dignity. I think Marcus would have laughed until he cried. Here is the thing I never expected. The thing that has genuinely surprised me. I expected the hard parts. I expected the complicated emotions, the adjusting, the learning to live alongside someone else's sorrow. I expected the nights when Lily called for her daddy in her sleep, and I sat in the doorway of her room, not knowing whether to go in or stay back. I expected all of that. What I did not expect was the joy. Not the loud, triumphant kind. Not the fireworks version of joy. I mean the quiet kind. The Saturday morning kind. When Lily climbs onto the couch, between us with her blanket and her stuffed rabbit, and we watch cartoons together, and the sunlight comes through the windows, and for a moment, everything in the world is exactly as it should be. I didn't expect to feel like somebody's person, like I was chosen, genuinely chosen, not out of loneliness or circumstance, but because two people looked at me and decided I was worth keeping around. I didn't expect to feel, at 39 years old, like I had finally come home. Some folks might hear this story and think it's strange. A man marrying his best friend's widow. I understand that. The world has opinions about things like this, and people are entitled to them. But I'll tell you what I know to be true, from standing inside this life. Love doesn't follow a tidy schedule. It doesn't wait for the right moment or the socially acceptable window. It shows up when it shows up, gentle and unannounced. Usually in the middle of something ordinary. A back porch, a kitchen table, a little girl with a melting popsicle, looking up at you with her whole heart in her eyes. And the question it asks is never complicated. It's always the same simple question Lily asked me that afternoon. Are you going to be our family now? I like to think Marcus sent me. I like to think that wherever he is, he knew exactly what he was doing when he spent 30 years making sure I was the kind of man who would show up. I like to think he's at peace with the answer. Because my answer, every single morning I wake up in that house, with that woman and that little girl, my answer is yes. 1,000 times yes. Without hesitation. Without reservation. Yes. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine in the writing of it, I'd be so grateful if you'd take just a moment to hit that like button and share it with someone you love. Stories like this one only reach the people who need them because of you. Your kindness in passing them along. If you're new here, we'd love to have you subscribe and stay a while. And if something in this story reminded you of someone in your own life, drop a comment below. I read every single one. Thank you for spending your time here. It means more than you know.